What would you do if the family that never invested in you suddenly showed up to claim everything you built alone? And what if the one person who was supposed to love you unconditionally looked you in the eye and said, "If you don't like it, leave"? My name is Elena Marsh. I'm 38 years old. I'm an independent financial consultant based out of Boston, and for most of my life, I was the one my family called the resilient one, the practical one, the one who didn't need as much. Those words were never meant as a compliment. They were a permission slip, permission to overlook me, to underfund me, to forget me at the table while my sister Diane got every seat. For 14 years I said nothing, I just built. The first night I slept in the villa, I left the windows open. The house sat perched on a bluff above the Atlantic, white stone walls still warm from the day's sun, salt air drifting in thick and clean through every room. I stood on the front porch in bare feet, listening to the ocean move against the rocks below, steady, unhurried, unbothered. It didn't ask for permission to be powerful, it just was. The porch light cast a soft amber glow across the worn wooden planks, and somewhere in the distance, a foghorn called once and went quiet. I pressed my hand flat against the railing, felt the cool grain of it under my palm, and thought, this is mine, not borrowed, not shared, not contingent on anyone's approval, mine. 14 years of overnight flights, client dinners I ate alone, investments I made in silence, all of it had carried me to this exact porch, this exact night, this exact exhale. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't waiting for anything. I had arrived. I just didn't know yet that the hardest part was still coming. But arriving doesn't happen overnight. To understand why that porch meant everything, you have to understand where I came from and what it cost me to get there. Growing up, my sister Diane was the sun in our family's solar system. Everything orbited around her. My parents, Richard and Carol, paid her full tuition at a private university without a second thought. They funded her wedding in Nantucket flowers, catering, a venue that overlooked the harbor. When she and her first husband bought a house, Richard and Carol covered the down payment. When that marriage started falling apart, they covered the second one too. There was always a reason, always an explanation that made it sound reasonable. Carol would say it plainly, without guilt. Diane needs more support right now. You're doing fine, Elena. You've always been the strong one. And Richard would nod, as if that settled it. I was 24 when I finally understood what those words really meant. I needed $8,000 to enroll in a certified financial planning program, a credential that would change the entire direction of my career. I asked my parents for a loan, not a gift. A loan. Carol's voice was gentle but firm. "Sweetheart, we just helped Diane clear her credit card debt. We're stretched thin right now." I hung up the phone and sat in my apartment for a long time. Then I walked into a bank, applied for a personal loan, and signed the paperwork alone. I paid it back in full, over 2 years. Not once did either of my parents ask how I managed. Not once did they notice. So I stopped waiting for them to notice. I took consulting contracts that sent me from Chicago to Seattle, and everywhere between. I ate airport meals at 6 a.m. and answered client emails at midnight. I opened a brokerage account with whatever was left after rent and started investing quietly, small amounts, consistent, patient. I said nothing about it to my family. Silence wasn't weakness. Silence was strategy. And then one morning in Portland, I sat across from a notary, signed my name on a property deed, and became the sole owner of a white stone house on the coast of Maine. My hand was steady. My chest was full. No one was there to witness it, and for the first time in my life, that was exactly how I wanted it. I thought signing that deed was the finish line. I had no idea it was actually the starting gun. 3 weeks after I moved in, I still woke up every morning like I had to remind myself it was real. The house was mine. The view was mine. The silence was mine. I had just settled into my first real sense of peace in years, and that's exactly when the phone rang. It was a Tuesday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, watching the fog lift slowly off the bay, the way it peels back in layers, unhurried, like the ocean was deciding how much to reveal. My phone buzzed on the table. Carol. I picked up. Her voice came through warm and bright, unusually bright, the kind of tone she only used when she needed something. Elena, honey, we have some wonderful news. I said nothing. I just listened, watching the fog continue to roll back across the water. She told me that Diane's second marriage had ended, that the house had been split in the divorce settlement, and Diane had walked away with almost nothing, that she and her 2 kids were currently sleeping in my parents' guest room, that the whole family had gotten together. She said it casually, like it was a Sunday dinner to talk through solutions. And then her voice softened even further, the way it does right before she says something she knows is unreasonable. You know, that beautiful place you have up in Maine. Diane and the kids need fresh air, a fresh start. Just for a little while, sweetheart. I didn't interrupt. I held the phone against my ear and looked out at the water. Then Richard's voice came on the line, steady and certain the way fathers get when they've already decided the outcome. This is family, Elena. Don't make it something it isn't. And then, Carol again, her patience thinning just slightly at the edges. If you have a problem with it, then step aside. The house will still be there. I said I understood. I ended the call. And then I opened the family group chat, the one I'd been quietly muted in for months, and scrolled up. There it was. A message from Diane, time-stamped 3 hours before Carol had called me. Thank you, everyone. We'll start moving at the end of the month. Maine is going to be a fresh start for all of us. Followed by a house emoji. 3 hours. They had already decided. The call from Carol wasn't a conversation. It was a notification. I set the phone face down on the table, finished my coffee, and sat very still for a moment. Not angry. Something colder than anger. The kind of clarity that comes when the last remaining doubt disappears and all that's left is the truth you've been avoiding. I had spent 14 years being managed. That ended now. The next morning, I drove to Portland and walked into the office of attorney Sandra Cole. I didn't go there to vent, I went there to build. We drafted 2 documents. The first was a formal short-term rental agreement, $4,200 per month, 2 months security deposit upfront, maximum 90-day occupancy, full liability clauses for any property damage. The second was a legal notice making clear that no occupancy rights existed beyond a signed agreement. After that, I called Marcus, a licensed property manager I'd been referred to, and he met me at the house that same afternoon. We updated every access code. We activated the security cameras at the gate, and the main entrance visible, plainly mounted, not hidden. If they were coming, they would arrive to structure, not assumption. Before I went to bed that night, I printed a confirmed booking for a furnished 3-bedroom apartment in Portland, available immediately, already reserved under Diane's name as an alternative. I placed it in a folder alongside the rental agreement. They thought my silence meant I was processing, adjusting, preparing to give in the way I always had. But this time, my silence had a different purpose entirely. They arrived on a Friday afternoon, right on schedule as if the whole thing had already been decided, which, of course, it had. The light that day was the kind of late afternoon gold that makes everything look warmer than it is. I was sitting on the front porch when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel drive. The folder was on my lap. A glass of water sat untouched on the table beside me. I wasn't nervous. I had done everything that could be done. What was left now was simply to be present. Diane's black SUV came around the bend first, followed closely by my parents' sedan. Car doors opened. I could hear my nephews before I could see them, their voices bright and careless the way children's voices are when they have no idea what the adults around them are arranging. Luggage wheels scraped across the gravel. Someone laughed. They sounded like a family arriving for vacation. Diane stepped out first. Oversized sunglasses, linen jacket, the easy confidence of someone who had already mentally arranged the furniture. She surveyed the house slowly, the way you look at something you believe belongs to you. My parents came around from the other side of the car. Carol spotted me on the porch and smiled that particular smile, the one she reserves for occasions when she needs to seem gracious. Elena, you look wonderful. You've really done well for yourself. The tone was light, approving, the way you compliment a child's drawing before asking if you can hang it somewhere else. I smiled back and said nothing. Diane walked straight toward the front door, her hand already reaching for the handle. She tried it once, then again. "It's locked," she said, turning back with a small frown, more confused than concerned. "Yes," I said, and stood up from my chair. That was the moment Marcus came around the side path, clipboard in hand, and attorney Sandra Cole followed 2 steps behind him. Navy blazer, black briefcase, expression professionally neutral. Diane pulled off her sunglasses. "What is this?" I walked down the porch steps, crossed the distance between us, and held the folder out to Carol. "Before anyone goes inside, there are a few things that need to be handled." Carol took the folder. She opened it, scanned the first page, and her expression shifted, the warmth draining out of it the way color drains from a face. "A rental agreement," she said flatly. "Yes," I replied. Richard stepped forward, and I could hear the shift in his voice, that low register he uses when he wants to sound like the final word. "Elena, this is family, not a transaction." I looked at him calmly. "The family rate is already applied. Market value on this property is $5,500 a month. The agreement reflects $4,200. Diane's voice came sharp and fast. "You cannot be serious right now. My kids need stability." I turned and looked directly at her. "So did I, Diane. For 14 years, so did I." The words landed quietly, but they landed. Then Carol reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Her jaw was set. "Fine. I'm calling David. He's a real estate attorney, and we are going to find out exactly whose name is on that deed." She said it like a threat, like the ground was about to shift beneath me. I held her gaze without blinking. "Please do. The deed is in my name, sole owner. No co-signers, no shared title, no parental contribution of any kind. Sandra has the documentation if anyone needs to review it." Sandra took one measured step forward and opened the briefcase. The papers were already tabbed. The silence that followed was long and specific, the kind that happens when people realize the argument they came prepared to win no longer exists. Wind moved in off the water, lifting Carol's hair across her face. She didn't push it back. Richard exhaled slowly, heavily, like a man setting something down that had been too heavy to carry. "You've changed," he said. I looked at him, and for a moment, I felt something, not regret, not anger, just the quiet weight of how long it had taken to get here. "Yes," I said. "I have." That was the truest thing spoken between any of us that entire afternoon. Diane did not sign. No one did. The SUV doors closed harder than necessary. Gravel scattered under the tires as they turned out of the drive and disappeared behind the tree line. And then there was nothing left but the sound of the ocean and the wind in the pines, steady and indifferent and clean. When the last sound of their engine faded into the tree line, the property went quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like the house itself had been holding its breath and finally let it go. Marcus walked over and held out the unsigned folder. "You handled that well," he said. I took it, nodded once, and thanked him. There was nothing more to say. After he left, I walked back inside, locked the front door behind me, and stood in the middle of the living room. The late sun was cutting low through the wide windows that faced the water, spreading gold across the floorboards in long, uneven lines. I didn't move for a moment. There was no rush of triumph, no tears, no collapse of relief, just a stillness, so complete it almost had a sound of its own. I thought about the 24-year-old version of myself, sitting alone in her apartment after that phone call, walking into a bank the next morning and signing a loan nobody ever asked her about. I thought about the overnight flights, the solo dinners under airport fluorescents, the brokerage account she built in total silence. Every one of those moments had been pointing here to this room, this light, this quiet. For 14 years I had been the one asked to adjust, to step back, to need less, not because I was strong, because it was convenient for everyone else if I was. I didn't hold that against them anymore, but I was done arranging my life around their comfort. The villa was never meant to be a gift to my family. It was the gift I gave myself, the first one, the real one, the one that couldn't be reassigned or borrowed or taken without my signature. That evening I opened the bedroom windows and let the Atlantic come in. The sound of it filled the room the way it had that very first night, unhurried, unapologetic, entirely its own. Only this time, it didn't sound like longing. It sounded like ownership. And if you've ever been the person in your family who was told directly or quietly that you don't need as much, I want you to hear this. You get to decide what you need. You always did.